Our story begins in Memphis, Tennessee on March 25, 1942, when Aretha Louise Franklin came forth into the world. This fine future musical icon was literally born and baptized by gospel music royalty. From her father, Baptist preacher, the Reverend Clarence LaVon Franklin, better known as CL, and her mother, Barbara Siggers Franklin, a gospel singer. Big changes took place when CL relocated his family to Detroit, Michigan upon his assignment as the pastor of the New Bethel Baptist Church. This is where she began to display her great talents. Young Aretha was forced to encounter several hardships at a very early age. The breakup of her parents when she was only 6 years old, and followed by the death of her mother at the tender age of 10. While this couldn't have been easy, Aretha and her siblings found comfort, strength, and support from the religious community around them. Imagine having the gospel powerhouse singer, Miss Mahalia Jackson, as one of your babysitters, and you begin to see the unprecedented success of Aretha wasn't a lucky break, but an unstoppable spiritual force in motion. Her father, CL, was a bit of a legend himself, being recognized in the Black Christian community as the man with the $1 million voice. Prominent figures in the religious community, such as Clara Ward, James Cleveland, and early Caravan members Albertina Walker and Inez Andrews, as well as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Jackie Wilson, and Sam Cooke, all paid respect to him, and young Aretha had plenty of influential figures to rub shoulders with. She taught herself to play piano by ear and deemed a child prodigy. In 1952, and shortly after the passing of her mother, young Aretha began displaying her talents and singing hymns at her father's church, and soon she joined him as part of his Gospel Caravans tour, where they performed in a variety of churches. By the age of 14, young Aretha, as part of her father's group, performed on multiple circuits alongside other gospel groups such as the Caravans and the Soul Stirrers. She had a crush on a handsome young singer in the latter group by the name of Sam Cooke. Her infatuation with this legendary smooth gospel singer wasn't merely stimulating, it was equally motivating as well as inspirational, as Mr. Cooke began to venture into the realm of pop and R&B, and also helped to launch a new genre of music called soul. Entering the world of commercial music could not have been an easy choice for Aretha and family. At that time, commercial music was considered, and still is in some circles today, as carnal and sinful by the gospel music community. Nevertheless, an 18-year-old Aretha signed her first deal to record commercially popular music and released 2 demos which caught the attention of Columbia Records. Columbia signed Aretha and released her first single, Today I Sing the Blues, and in September of 1960, the song climbed to the top 10 of the Hot Rhythm and Blues Sellers chart. Recognizing a talent on the rise, Sam Cooke of RCA Records and Barry Gordy Jr. of Motown Records made attempts to sign Aretha to their respective labels, but her father and then husband preferred to chart their own course. The truly wonderful thing about Miss Franklin then, as it is today, is her uncompromising way of infusing her powerful gospel roots into whatever type of music she performs. During her early years, she recorded and released a variety of singles, from standards to vocalized jazz, blues, doo-wop, and rhythm and blues, and yet never once did she assimilate to the style of the music, and instead, she made the song assimilate to her incomparable voice. Rockabye Your Baby with a Dixie melody and Operation Heartbreak were perfect examples of a voice that refused to be compromised by conformity. Simply put, Aretha had too much soul to hold. Although she more than held her own among the more popular artists of the early 1960s, many felt Columbia Records was unsure exactly how to utilize her phenomenal talents, and thus she decided not to renew her contract with the record company and signed with Atlantic Records. Here is where Miss Franklin began to hit her mark. It's been said that cream rises to the top. Well, Miss Aretha Franklin didn't just rise to the top. She was about to force the recording industry to raise the level of the glass. In 1967, Aretha began recording at the famed studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and shortly after, she released I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You, and it went straight to the #1 position on the R&B chart. Then went on to peak at the #9 position on the Billboard Hot 100. This earned her first top 10 pop single, Do Right Woman, Do Right Man, the B-side, and follow-up single, reached the R&B Top 40 and peaked at #37. In April of that same year, Aretha began her ascent to the crown as Queen of Soul with the powerful, inspirational remake of Otis Redding's hit, Respect. And by the time the smoke cleared, it was #1 on both the R&B and the pop charts and stands today as her signature song. This also became the national anthem for not only the civil rights movement, but the feminist movement as well, with the release of her first album on Atlantic, followed by the success of 2 more hits such as Baby I Love You and You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman. Miss Franklin went on a phenomenal streak, turning out hits with the rapidity of a Gatling gun. In 1968, she released multiple top-selling albums like Lady Soul and Aretha Now, which spawned successful singles such as Chain of Fools, Ain't No Way, Think, and I Say a Little Prayer. In that same year, she earned the first of her 2 Grammy Awards, as well as the Best Female R&B Vocal Performance Award. Even those in the Black Christian community paid tribute to her by declaring a day in her honor. This ceremony included her longtime friend, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., who presented her with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference Drumbeat Award for musicians. Sadly, this occurred a mere 2 months before his death. Aretha went on to appear on the cover of Time magazine that year, and by the time that year concluded, Miss Aretha Franklin had served notice that she had built her throne and now wore the crown as the reigning Queen of Soul. Like the queen piece on a chessboard, Miss Aretha Franklin has the ability to strike from all angles of musical diversity. From R&B to easy listening to pop to jazz, even to rock and opera, it seems there is no area of music that is beyond her reach. And while she has proven this throughout the course of her career, all the while, mind you, she has never compromised, but instead engulfed the genre and made it her own, as only a queen can do. With the dawning of the 1970s and the ever-changing variations of musical preferences, the Queen expanded her reach and released groundbreaking singles like Spanish Harlem, Rocksteady, Daydreaming, and with a little help from Mr. Stevie Wonder, she released the ever-popular Till You Come Back to Me. She also decided to venture back to her gospel roots as well as invest in the inspirational contribution to the upliftment of her people by releasing Spirit in the Dark, Young, Gifted, and Black, and the inspirational Amazing Grace. The latter sold well over 2 million copies. Aretha became the first R&B performer to headline at the Fillmore West and recorded a live album entitled Aretha Live at the Fillmore West. As the decade moved along, and with fickle musical tastes continuing to change, the Queen began for the first time in her career to experience a few missteps. Several albums failed to crack the top 40 and garner expected success, whether this was due in part to production or marketing or selective radio programming or whatever. One thing was for sure, it was never a question about what Miss Aretha Franklin brought to the table. In 1976, the Queen of Soul joined forces with one of the creators of the soundtrack of the African American Experience, Mr. Curtis Mayfield, to create the soundtrack to the American classic movie Sparkle. Many believed at that time the record label wanted a vocalist with charisma, charm, commercial appeal, and name recognition to make the album a success. So they called on the Queen, and she delivered. Although her voice and style were clearly different from those who sang in the movie, once again, Aretha's indomitable dynamic vocalizations made these songs her own, and thus easily accepted. The single Something He Can Feel journeyed up the charts and landed in the #1 position. In the 1980s, and as she approached 20 years of wearing the crown, it seemed Aretha might be losing momentum. However, throughout her reign as the Queen of Soul, she touched as well as inspired the hearts and souls of millions. She had given her heart and soul to her loyal subjects, and now it was time for her subjects to return the favor. She left Atlantic Records and signed with Clive Davis of Arista Records. In 1980, the Queen of Soul gave a command performance before the Queen of England at the Royal Albert Hall. In that same year, John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd tapped her to play a waitress in the classic comedy musical, The Blues Brothers. She followed that with a #3 R&B hit from her Arista debut album, where she joined forces with the soulful baritone voice of Mr. Michael McDonald and released a song entitled Ever-Changing Times. She also was nominated for a Grammy for her cover of Otis Redding's I Can't Turn You Loose. She followed that with the title track from the Love All the Hurt Away album, a fantastic duet with jazz superstar and guitarist Mr. George Benson, which was released in 1981. Her rendition of Sam and Dave's Hold On, I'm Coming, featured on that same album, earned her another Grammy Award. The late great Luther Vandross offered his services to the Queen and returned her to the top of the charts with the million-seller Jump to It. It was the first time she'd cracked the top 40 singles chart after a 7-year absence. In 1985, producer Nardo Michael Walden joined the Queen's court and reinforced her supremacy with hits like Who's Zoomin' Who and Freeway of Love, which reached platinum status. Annie Lennox and Dave Stewart of the group The Eurythmics lent their services to the Queen, recorded and released Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves, which served as an updated anthem for the feminist movement. Ironically, the group had tapped Queen of Rock diva Tina Turner to unite with them on the project. However, she was too busy, and thus they turned to the Queen, and as always, she did not disappoint. Just as ironic is the fact that in the late 70s, the classic R&B dance group Chic offered their services to the Queen. However, they were unable to find an accord, so they took their services to the Queen of Pop, Miss Diana Ross, and she scored massive success with the hit Upside Down. Nevertheless, her subjects continued to come forward and offer their services to the Queen. She scored an international #1 hit with pop star George Michael, Knew You Were Waiting. She released several gospel albums and lent her vocal talents to the opening song for the 1980s television sitcom, A Different World. Like her male counterpart, the King of Soul and legendary Godfather of Soul, Mr. James Brown, Miss Aretha Franklin always manages to rise to the top, regardless of the period or the musical preference at any given time. In the 1990s, she continued to climb the charts with hits like What You See Is What You Sweat and A Deeper Love, and still other up-and-coming artists lent their services to the Queen, including Sean Puffy Combs, Daryl Simmons, Kelly Price, and Lauryn Hill on the CD A Rose Is Still a Rose. While new musical spins and trends may come and go, one thing remains consistent. People know a damn good thing when they hear it, and no one demonstrates this more than Miss Aretha Franklin. Whether performing for the monarchy of a foreign country, a presidential ceremony, or simply for a crowd in a small storefront church, every time this woman opens her mouth, she reminds us that God's most beautiful and glorious work begins within and then works its way out. Many describe her voice as a vehicle of overwhelming excitement, a wave of ecstasy, passion, and pain that can only come from spiritual permeation. She performed a beautiful rendition of My Country 'Tis of Thee at President Barack Obama's inaugural ceremony, and as recently as Thanksgiving Day 2016, she stunned the crowd in her hometown of Detroit, Michigan, with a soul-stirring 4-minute rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner that still have people talking. Of course, with a career so vast and filled with so many illustrious, momentous achievements, far too many to list in this video, we give you a few of her major accolades. In 2011, Miss Franklin accepted an honorary degree from Yale University. Upon the success of her cover of Adele's Rolling in the Deep, which checked in at number 47 on the charts, Miss Franklin became the first woman to have 100 songs on the Billboard's Hot R&B Hip-Hop Songs chart. She received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1979. She had her voice declared a Michigan Natural Resource in 1985. She became the first woman inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987. The NARAS awarded Aretha with a Grammy Legend Award in 1991, a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 1994. She became a Kennedy Center honoree in 1994, a recipient of the National Medal of Arts in 1999, bestowed a Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2005. Miss Franklin became the second woman inducted to the UK Music Hall of Fame in 2005. She was the 2008 Music Cares Person of the Year. She is ranked among the Billboard Hot 100 all-time artists. She is ranked first on the Rolling Stone list of greatest singers of all time. She was inducted to the GMA Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 2012. Many declare that her voice embodies the spirit and soul of the civil rights movement, as well as the voice of African America and a symbol of Black equality. Even an asteroid was named in her honor in 2014. Now that is truly soul on a roll. After hearing her perform A Natural Woman at the 2015 Kennedy Center Honors, President Obama declared American history wells up when Aretha sings. She holds honorary degrees everywhere from Harvard to the New England Conservatory of Music, as well as the Berklee College of Music. There have been and there are many queens and or divas in music history, from Roberta to Patti, to Dion to Tina, to Diana to Mavis, to Martha to Chaka, to Gladys to Natalie, from Tina M to Mary J, from Sissy to Whitney, to Fantasia to Beyonce, and many other divas may hold high places in the court of soul. However, there is but one undisputed, unchallenged, unquestioned, absolute queen of soul, and her name is Miss Aretha Louise Franklin. Yes, all hail the Queen.